Hello everyone, this is How to Speak Nebraskan. Let's get started. Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to the first podcast of How to Speak Nebraskan. I'm excited for today. I've been planning on this day for several months. I'm also just a little bit nervous. We're approaching the holidays right now, and to be honest with you, I had hoped to record this first episode that I'm doing right now way back in August. Have you ever had those ideas that you've had for quite a while, something you want to do that's exciting or creative or a side gig of some sort? People always say they have a side gig. I've never really had a side gig. It's never been my thing. I've had little hobbies here and there. I've done marathons and half marathons. I suppose running has been my response usually throughout my life when people say, do you have any hobbies? That's probably the most common one that I've given. Other things I like to do. But, you get these ideas of little projects that you want to start just for fun. Again, a side gig. I've been wanting to do this for quite a while, and I actually conceived this idea back in the summer. Back in about June, I was in my backyard working on a project, and this idea came to me. One Saturday morning, I got up. I was looking out my back window, and I was looking at my deck. It was a really nice, beautiful day in June. We actually had nothing really planned that day, which, gotta love those Saturdays when it's beautiful outside and you can just kind of have this open day. And I looked out there, and something was driving me crazy. Our deck had paint peeling off of it like crazy. It had actually been driving me nuts for about 2 years. And it's just one of those things, you just kind of let it go. You forget about it. You don't think about it for a while. You see it again later. You're like, I'm going to do that sometime. I'm going to fix that. But you don't get around to it. So one Saturday morning I got up. I was looking outside. I decided to go to where these paint strips were kind of starting to peel. And I just started peeling them off in these large strips. It was incredibly satisfying, My daughter had actually sometimes done that. She had just on her own sometimes peeled these little strips off. And I used to get after her initially when she did it. I was like, oh, don't peel the paint off the deck, please. But then I realized, the deck looked like crap. And I actually really kind of quit caring when she did it. So I went outside one day and then I started doing it. I was like, I'm finally going to do this. I'm going to get this started. So on one Saturday morning, I get up, start peeling the paint off. And like anything else, this project that I thought might take a day or two turned into 2 months. I didn't work on it every day for 2 months, of course. I, took breaks here and there. But it took much longer than I realized. I was peeling these strips of paint off. Then I realized, I had to go buy some paint. So I ran up to the hardware store and I took one of the strips of paint that I had gotten and got it matched and brought it back to start. But peeling it off took forever, the large strips. And then you got the little stuff kind of hanging off. So you got to get sandpaper and you got to sand it. And we have a pretty big deck. We're kind of have a walkout basement so that it sticks up high because you got stairs that go down. You got these little pieces of, these little boards everywhere, the little beams that you have on a deck. And so it takes a while. So I finally started all the peeling, all the painting, all the putting the blue painter's tape down so it didn't get on the floor of the deck, even though I was only halfway successful at that. And then we took a vacation. It was already in June, and in late June, before we knew it, we went on a vacation. We visited family. Then it was the 4th of July in the beginning of July. And so like any project that you typically have, you put it off for a while. And then you come back to it here and there. The good news is that when you start a project like that, it's very visual. You see the deck staring at you, looking at you, almost talking to you. Are you finally going to do this? You're finally going to paint this deck? I remember when I first went out there and started peeling paint, my wife came outside and she just kind of started laughing and said, you're finally doing this, huh? I mean, I'd been complaining about it for 2 years after all, so she just saw the humor that it was a very random day. I had not told her I was going to do it because I thought of it right at the moment and just kind of went out and started doing it. Finally, August rolls around. Kids are getting ready to start school. I finally finished the project and finally got it done. I was very happy. I could look at that deck. It was all painted, really nice. It just looked good. I was also a little embarrassed. One of those projects you do, it took you so much longer than you expected. And so while I was proud of myself, I wasn't going to go boasting about it exactly because I was also just a little bit like, yeah, I finally got it done. That project is kind of an example of this project with this podcast. While working on the deck, I would listen to podcasts. I hadn't listened to a lot of podcasts before, but I just found myself really enjoying them. I'd take little trips in here and there in my minivan, and I would connect to a podcast, and I started asking myself this question: why not me? Why don't I give this a shot? I wouldn't mind doing a podcast. At first, of course, I didn't know what I was going to talk about or what it would be titled. You have to think of those things. Sometimes it just comes to you. But when I listen to these podcasts, I will say this: I did not quite anticipate all of the steps that would be involved. A lot of times you hear other people and you just think, oh gosh, they just kind of sit down, they record themselves saying something, they upload it, and voila, you got a podcast. I quickly learned that if you want to do it, at least to the level maybe of somewhat quality, I'll let you all decide if this is quality or not, but you have standards for yourself, that there's going to be steps along the way. And so I conceived this idea, and I was trying to think through, what would I want to have my show be about? I want it to be fun. I want it to be lighthearted. I want to be able to have guests on my show. I want to be able to talk to them. I want to be able to highlight things of stories that you sometimes hear about, maybe in the news here and there, but I just wanted a chance to give other people a voice to say, hey, you're doing cool things. What are you doing? Or you know something that's interesting. What is it you know? When you're driving home sometimes from work and you hear that perfect song on the radio, that perfect song comes on, it puts you in the right mood, you get home, it just kind of sets the tone for you for the day. I love it when that happens. You're able to just get there and say, that's just what I needed. Well, that's what I want this show to be about. I want to be able to connect with you, whoever you are, whether we know each other or not, whether we've met or not. I want us to be able to connect in some way. It's a way for us to cross paths on this journey in our busy lives and help support one another. I also want you to hear other people and have fun listening about their experiences. How to Speak Nebraskan is going to be a chance for us to hear from some great Nebraskans who have a story to share. I'll highlight some of the great things about this state, but it's much broader than that. I'll be offering a take on many different things, and I'll mostly interview people from Nebraska. I may also interview people who are not from Nebraska. But this podcast is not just about our great state. It's about our journey together. Everyone's journey. Because if you live in a different part of the country, and hopefully if you do, you are able to take pride in your hometown, your home state, this podcast will hopefully shed light on the importance and enjoyment we all have in our communities, regardless of where you live. All my Nebraska friends know this. We're often referred to as flyover country. When you live here in the Midwest, you hear flyover country because apparently here in the United States, all the excitement happens out on the coasts, the East Coast and the West Coast. We all know there's a lot of excitement out there. Fly over, you look down in the Midwest, and a lot of times people might think, don't want to stop there. It's boring there. We all know this in the Midwest. We especially know it here in Nebraska, that people say this about us. I don't think it's so bad, because people also say Nebraska's nice. We also know that when you live here and you call this place home, it's pretty great. Now, granted, that could be up to interpretation, but most people will say this place is pretty great. Nebraska has many great things going for it, most notably the people. And I can't even tell you how many times I've talked to people from other states, other parts of the country, and they'll all say, everyone in Nebraska is so nice. The people there are just great. And when people from Nebraska move away, oftentimes they'll even say, I miss the people. I miss the genuineness of people from Nebraska. Many of us feel that way. Obviously, not everybody's perfect. It doesn't matter where you go. You're going to have people that you don't like. But day in and day out, generally speaking, this place is pretty great. Nice people are all around us, right? Right now in our world, it's hard not to get bogged down with negativity. So nice people are good to be around. We all share in the great joys in this world and in the negativity. I can't tell you for myself right now if I think the world is actually more negative or if I'm just noticing it more. I think many of us sometimes feel that way. Maybe it's just affecting us differently. But I can tell you this. We all need to remember what's right in this world. We need to be the positive light for others around us. We really need it for our own sanity. We also need to support one another. We not only need to be a positive light for others, but we need to try and be around others to be a positive light for us. Because we can only give so much to others. We need them to also energize us in a friendly and a positive way. When we allow others to do that for us, and when we try to commit to being that for others, it's easier to focus on the positive. And it helps us to hopefully let the negativity have less of an impact on us, allowing ourselves to be less frustrated, hopefully less nervous, hopefully a little less depressed. When we decide to surround ourselves with a little bit more positivity, it truly makes our world a better place. It doesn't matter how small or significant it may seem. So my hope for you in this podcast is that we can connect, that you can know that whether we end up meeting each other or not, we can still be friends. We can support one another. I hope when you listen, you can either go away feeling inspired or simply in a better mood. I hope you'll find yourself connecting a little bit more. If I have listeners on this podcast, it'll keep me going. So hopefully there'll be some listeners. It'll inspire me to give back to this world in this way and in others. And hopefully it'll help you, as you give back to others, to do that in your own special way and motivate you to do so. We're going to have a lot of fun, and I could not be more excited at this point to start this journey with you. I'm glad you made it. Thanks for joining. So much more to come. This is How to Speak Nebraskan.